Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Hi. So listen, first question is for the audience out here. How many of you, when you go home, feel right at home? Raise your hands if you feel like your space is the space you want.
Well, great. You guys can leave.
There we go.
You got it.
You got it. You're good. So we're going to ask you to leave. And that, no.
All the rest of you guys who you hate your house, you guys can stay.
But isn't that something we all want? We want to feel right.
I know.
Like, we said
like, you guys give us swivel chairs, and I'm like, I'm just gonna swivel the whole time.
You can't give two gay guys a swivel chair.
I have one in my office that I'm always doing Zooms on, and I'll watch an interview after, and the whole time I'm just like this, and I'm like, God, I've got to put a break on that.
Oh, I'm showing a lot of ankle here.
Same.
Okay. Okay. So when did you first start feeling right at home?
I mean, wow.
In the deep sense of the word. And phrase.
Yesterday, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I think home is always such an evolving thing. You know, I wouldn't say that I do feel 100% right at home yet. You know, because I think that as your life evolves, as your life changes, as the circumstances, relationships, jobs, you know, I think you're always needing to change that a bit. And that's what this book is about. We've been planning on doing a renovation to our house for the last 3 years, and we have not yet, which is why I say I don't fully feel right at home. Our house is this really cool old mid-century. She had some really abusive relationships in the 90s. And every time I look at those abusive relationships, it makes me sad. So I am not quite yet 100% right at home.
Now, why wouldn't you be able to have that going on? Like having a renovation happen?
It's so funny. Imagine that. Like I do it all day long. I just don't want to do it at home. It's like chefs don't necessarily want to cook when they get home.
That's
like
true,
my friends that do hair, like they're like the last thing I want to do is. And so like sometimes I just the last thing I want to do is my own home. Because people are always like, oh, I bet you change your house up all the time.
Yeah.
No. I put it together when we moved in and haven't really touched it since.
So where did the concept come from? Because I do love it. How many have the book already? Great. Okay. How many have looked at it and read it? And yeah, okay. So it is really in depth. It's very thoughtful. And it is a book. I never thought I'd want to sit and read a design book because they are the most boring books.
I like to consider it more as a self-help book than a design book. It's a self-help book that just happens to use design to help you improve your life. There's a story I talk about, I think in like the very first chapter of when I was little. I grew up in Missouri, not too far from here. And it's like usually when I say that, somebody,
no one from Missouri.
There's nobody from Missouri here. Okay, wow. And my mom had decorated my bedroom in all red curtains, red bedspread, red rum. And I just, like, as this 5-year-old, 6-year-old little kid, I couldn't articulate that, oh, this red gives me anxiety. I just knew that it didn't make me feel good. Like, I was not at peace in that room. So my grandma and my aunts and uncles would all send me, like, these little $20 checks for my birthday. And I talked my mom into letting me buy home decor for my birthday.
And she didn't know you were gay.
Yeah, right? No. She was still shocked.
Yeah,
I was
my
like,
mom too.
My daddy's like, you were always surrounded by girls. I'm like, girlfriends, Dad, not girlfriends. So I went out and I bought all blue, like blue bedspread, blue rug, blue pillows, and I based it all around this like really cool dinosaur poster that I had found with blues, and like I totally
so butch.
I found like so butch, like
so butch of you, the
T-Rex,
dinosaur,
little T-Rex.
The T-Rex is totally gay.
Look at the way he runs. He's like, T-Rex. He's like tries to play butch, but then you see him run, and you're like, I see you, girl. Oh, I need to come up with a little gay T-Rex cartoon now.
That's why he's so mad. He's all bottled up.
Okay, remind me. Somebody DM me that. Gay T-Rex cartoon. It's got to be big. It's going to be called Rexy.
You can produce it. You're in that field now.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so back to
red
so
rum.
I just for some reason felt that blue made me feel better, and it really does. Like color has such a power on our mental health. And then during COVID, we were all stuck in our homes, and a lot of us really started to think about our homes and the way our homes made us feel, and either good or bad. And, people have been asking me to do a design book ever since the show came out. All my castmates, they ran out there and did books the day our show came out. And everyone's like, where's your...
Is there a little judgment?
No. I always thought it's funny because I didn't do one for years later. And I will literally get photos from fans who will line up their books and then just circle a big empty circle at the end. It's like, where's your book? I'm like, relax, I'm getting there. But I didn't want to do just a design book.
Yeah.
Because all design books are great. Anything that cultivates design I think is amazing. But often design books really make you feel bad about your space. They make you feel inadequate about your space, right? Like even as a designer, I look at them sometimes and I'm like, my space doesn't look like that. But luckily I know that behind that camera is like a dozen people that made that space look perfect. Nobody lives like that. But I wanted to do a book that would actually help you figure out how to make your space work for you. So this book is about, the first chapter is about finding what you love, and it's not about mid-century modern or farmhouse modern, or it's not, it literally the first thing I say is let's normalize not asking people what their design aesthetic is. It's about what's your favorite movie, what's your favorite trip, like finding out the things that you're passionate about, because those are the things that you should tie into design at your home, because those are the things that are really filling your cup.
And I love that you make it very easy for people because you have, I even marked it off here because I'm like Oprah with my...
As I was sitting here, I was thinking to myself, God, I feel like I'm sitting here with Oprah.
Everybody look under your seat. No, okay.
You get a car and you get a car. Right? You're giving them cars?
No, I was just going to give them a mint or something. But no, you have this interactive element of the book, which I always love in a book because it makes you think, it makes you become a part of the book. Was that important to you to make people feel empowered?
It was important to me because I didn't want this to be about my perspective on what I think is good design. Because again, design is so relative. Design is so personal. You might love that ugly purple credenza that your Aunt Gertrude left you because it really brings back a lovely, wonderful memory, and I think it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. So it's all relative. So I really wanted to do some work pages in the book because I wanted to really invoke thought from you about what makes you happy, the last time you felt safe, something that reminds you of a loved one, like things like that.
How do you not insult someone when you don't like what they're doing design-wise? It's a fine line, right? Because you're saying in one breath...
It's like, I love that for you.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. But in one breath, you're saying, okay, have the purple credenza, but in your head, you're screaming and being like, burn it.
No, I really don't. And I get actually kind of sad sometimes because I'll have friends that never invite me over. And I always kind of take it personal. And then one day they're like, I don't want you to judge my house.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm not coming over to judge your house. I'm coming over to hang out with you.
I'm coming over to judge you.
Yeah. So the only thing I will ever judge in someone's home is if it's dirty or if it's cluttered, because those are bad things. But your decor choices, those are your decor choices.
But I do picture you like Terminator walking into a room, looking, scanning the room.
I do. I just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm judging.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it in my head.
And then when you get a check, all of a sudden you start giving your opinions.
Well, because then they're asking for it.
Right. So design really has, we talked a little bit about this when I interviewed you for the show. It's really brought you along. It's brought you to some incredible places. I would like to go back a little bit to talk about your time in Missouri and you discovering yourself and taking, where's that? I heard a boo, but no. But you had a really hard time. Luckily, things have turned around. But at one point, you chose to leave your house and leave your parents at 15 years old. So why did you do that? And
Missouri.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody was cheering for Missouri, including me. So I grew up in a very small, little conservative religious town. And every single day of my life, I wore a mask, and not an N95 mask, like a fake mask. I love sports and girls, and there was nobody in the world that really.
Were you that guy? Were you?
I tried to be.
Yeah,
I tried to be. And when there's not one person in the world that really knows you for who you are, it gets very lonely. Because you start to think, well, that nobody actually likes me for me. And if they did know me, they wouldn't like me. So which is why LGBTQ teens have the highest rate of suicide, because eventually you're just like, well, no one cares, no one knows me, and that's kind of the point I was at.
Did you have a teacher? Did you have one like aunt, or there's all sense not anybody?
Towards the very end, yes, which is what kind of helped me be like, well, I can't keep living like this anymore. I need to be out. I couldn't come out in my town. One kid came out, and we call them the shit kickers. They were the cowboys that came to school with like cow poop on their boots. Yeah, no.
We have
Nobody?
We have a lot of those.
They ran him off the road and like tried to kill him one night. And so I was like, okay, well, I can't come out here, but I also can't not come out. And things weren't always so great at home. I had very religious, conservative parents, and kind of crap went down one night. And they used to always say, if you don't lock the rules, there's the door. And then that night I was like, okay, bye. And so at 15 I left, and I was.
Where did you get that courage? Because that takes such courage. Is it just
blind stupidity?
Yeah, blind stupidity.
Yeah, I think that actually should be the title of my next book. It really should.
Memoir.
Just blind stupidity. Yeah,
that's a memoir.
Somebody doing me that too. Yeah. So where was I? Oh, so at 15 left. I couch surfed a lot on friend sofas. I lived in my car. There was a couple weeks off and on that I literally lived on the streets. But it was worth it because I was me. And I might not have been the best version of myself yet, but I was learning how to be.
When did you come out? When did you first?
Yeah.
During that time. So how did that go? Was it a certain person? Was it a kiss? Was it a? How did you admit it to yourself? Or were you always saying, I'm gay, I can't tell anybody?
No, I always knew I was different, but I didn't really, there was no, it ages me, there was no internet, there was no way to like Google feelings. And
how old are you?
I know.
Oh my
well,
God.
There was internet, but it was just in the computer lab and the school. You didn't have access to go over and get on whatever you wanted. There was no smartphones. You'd get caught. So I had started, exploring online, like being like, oh, this is why I'm so awkward and I don't fit in with anybody else, and I think boys are cute. Oh, that's why. And so do you remember ICQ?
What's that? Oh, someone felt it.
Yeah, it was like precursor of AOL Instant Messenger, because it was like this chat program. And I had met one person who was gay on there, and they kind of like helped me work through it and come to terms with it and be okay with it and start to love myself, which is why I ended up moving to Denver after that, because I knew one person in the world outside of Missouri, and it was Jesse in Denver.
And then when did design come into the picture? When did you say, hey, not only do I like this, but I'm good at it and I'm going to pursue it?
Design's always been kind of therapy for me. Like I've always understood the power of making your home make you feel good. And even when I did not have the money to do much, my friends and I would have like decor swap parties where we'd bring stuff that we were bored with, they'd bring stuff they were bored with.
Oh my God.
Somebody would bring a bottle of vodka, and
that's
we'd
like
just
the
switch
gayest
stuff.
thing
yeah,
ever.
Right? It's the gayest thing ever. It was great, right? And even like sometimes I lived in like some really, really, really scary apartments, but I'd always like save up some money to get a can of paint, and I'd paint it, I'd scrub it, because I understood like I need to come home and I need to be able to recharge, and having a space make me feel good is very important.
When did you first get paid for it?
I haven't yet, no.
The books are free.
So I did a lot of retail. I left high school at my end of my sophomore year, and so I worked at a lot of Applebee's. Yeah, the Applebee's was always my fallback job. Anytime I'd lose a job, I'd go back to Applebee's. They'd always take me. And so I worked a lot of retail, and then I started working in like furniture retail stores. So I worked at the Bombay Company, the Great Indoors, which it was a Sears company, so it probably started around here, right? Yeah. And then where else? Restoration Hardware. And so I started like being able to interact with people buying stuff and helping them pick stuff out. And I was like, oh, I really, really like this. And then I worked at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Oh, R.I.P.
No.
R.I.P.
No. Anyways.
Dish.
It's a tall tale, like a good example of companies who don't treat their people well. Like you should treat your people well. It wasn't just me, it was everybody. Yeah. Yeah, anyways. And then after Bed Bath & Beyond, I went to work for a company called Portico. There actually used to be a Portico here, if you guys remember. You're shaking your head. You remember it. Sadly, I was the one they sent to close the one here. That was my first trip to Chicago ever. God. Yeah, I know. That was my first experience in Chicago.
You had to fire everybody?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Anyways, but that was like this really pretty home furnishing store, if you guys remember. And I also built their e-commerce division, and their e-commerce, and one day, like, the whole company just went belly up and went bankrupt. And I was like, well, crap, what am I gonna do? So I cloned the database I had built for their e-commerce division, and I registered BobbyBerkHome.com, and I put it all on BobbyBerkHome.com, and I was like, maybe I'll sell a sofa or two while I look for another job. But I sold more than a few. I was one of the first online retailers for furniture out there. Like, Amazon was still just selling books. You know, this was in the early aughts. That did well. So then I opened up my first store in Soho in New York, and then Miami, and then Atlanta, and then LA. And then I started focusing on design and licensing and like helping our customers pick out things from the store. And then the very first home I ever designed was with Builder Magazine. Heather, are you here? There she is with this lady here, with her and her architect
So
firm.
the magazine called you up and said...
No, so she's not with the magazine. She's with the architecture firm that designed the houses that then I decorated. But they called me and they're like, hey, Builder Magazine called and like, we hired a PR firm to tell us who the most well-known millennial interior designer was, and they said it was you. And in my mind, I was like, that's funny because I'm not an interior designer. I'm a retailer. Like, I curate pretty things, but I definitely do not. I don't know CAD. You know, I don't know how to do electrical plans. But they're like, we want you to design the show homes for the International Builder Show. And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, of course I can do that. And the moment I hang up the phone, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that. But I figured it out, and I think they were a pretty good success. And because of that, the builder that we were working with was like, oh, we want you to design some more of our homes. And that was 8 years ago. And just this year, I signed a deal with them where now I'm like the spokesperson for their company. I'm designing all of their model communities pretty much nationwide from coast to coast. Thank you. So it's been something that organic. I always say I kind of fell into design, but I've always understood the power of design. Even since I was a little kid, I've always understood how transformative space can make you feel. And that's what this book was about, is really helping you understand how changing your space can make you feel. And it's not just about spending a lot of money. If you have it, that's great. That definitely helps. But it can be literally just thinking about something that makes you happy. That could be a rock that you found on the beach, walking with your loved one, that when you look at it, it transports you to that wonderful memory. Those are the things that you need in your home, the items and the scents, the smells that transport you to when you felt safe, when you felt loved, you know, that type of thing. That's what
and you talk about all of that in this book. You even talk about grief, which I thought was a beautiful addition, and I wasn't expecting to see that. Did you have a particular story about that, or was there a client you dealt with? Or
So if you guys remember, I forget what season it was. Anyways, I think it was Kansas City. John Elrod on Queer Eye. He had recently lost his wife to cancer. He had 2 little boys, and they had decided to sell the home that they grew up in because it hurt too much and start new in a new home. And so I got the honor of helping them set up their new home. And it was touchy because there was a lot of things they brought with them that reminded them of her, which you want to keep those, but also it was just like a knife in the heart every time he would see them. And he was just like, you know, I don't know how to move on, but also honor the memory of her. I don't ever want my sons to forget her, but I can't move on if I'm just confronted with things that remind me of her everywhere I walk in the home. Like I need to be at peace. So I made this beautiful hope chest for them, and I put all the memories in there. And we put like one room that had pictures of her, and so we wanted to really respect her memory and keep her memory, but also help them to be able to heal and move on. And so that was kind of what caused me to write that chapter. I brought my book home to my mom for the first time a month and a half ago. My father passed about 2 months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I had forgot that chapter was even in there, and I set it down on the counter, and the next morning I came down and she was sitting there eating breakfast, reading that chapter, crying. I didn't really think when I wrote it how close it would be to home, but it is really important, you know. grief is a horrible, horrible thing, especially when you lose your spouse, you know, in every single thing in your home. My mom is going through that right now. She just turned 72 days ago, and she's never lived by herself in her life. And you know, today even she was like, you know, I think I'm gonna donate some of his clothes, you know, and so she's slowly working through it. Which I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, I think that's a little soon, but okay. You know, like, you do what you need to do. But yeah, that's why I wrote a chapter about grief. Because again, this book isn't about, oh, this is my point of view on design, and you should do everything with shiplap, and you should do, sorry, Joanna. You know, you should do this, and you should do that. What is she here? Oh God, no, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Don't kill me. You know, this is about like teaching you how it really connects to your mental health. Yeah.
What is your relationship with your mom like now?
My relationship's really good with my mom, and it was with my dad as well.
Yeah.
You know, for years it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
How did they take to you coming out? Like, when did you go back? And
We didn't speak for years. Yeah.
after coming out, or after you leaving?
That was the same time, one and the same. Yeah, we didn't speak for years. You know, they had to work through, you know, a lot of times us as LGBTQ, like, we've had our whole lives to kind of figure things out. And then when we tell our family, we expect them to instantly just be like, yay, I love you. They need time too. You know, they need time to, and it sounds bad, but to mourn the person that they thought you were, and to learn how to love the person that you are now. And, you know, they have a lot of dreams for their children, and they're often, the most straight or gay, you know, your parents' dreams for you aren't always exactly what you want your dreams to be, you know? So I feel like it took them a few years to work through, and especially when you're dealing with those religious things that teach you, oh, you can't love your son's going to hell. This, you know, they had to work through that. So I don't hold it against them. And in the end, like, I feel like my dad loves my husband Dewey more than me. Seriously, my husband's name is Dewey. My dad calls him Doo-Doo. And anytime we'd be on FaceTime, he's like, where's Doo-Doo? Where's Doo-Doo? And I'm like, yeah, I think you love him more than you love me. But I loved that. Yeah.
Were you ever able to realize, obviously it was about religion, but my parents were Catholic, and over time, when they would talk to me about, because they got very upset when I came out with to them, I realized it was just because they cared about me, and they were just worried, and they didn't know how to express it, and they didn't have any gay people in their life. Did you find out what it was for them? Was it just, you're going to burn in hell, or was it more like?
It's mostly that, yeah. And yeah, it's mostly the hell thing. I think that was the big one in their mind, yeah. But I also think, like, they were worried for me as well, that I would never find my place in the world. The world would never accept me. You know, this was the 90s. You know, we didn't have the original Fab Five out there blazing trails for us. You know, it wasn't until 2003 that my dads came on TV. You know, they love it when I call them that. The very first, right before our show came out, they had us do a dinner together on camera for People magazine, and I referred to them as the OGs. And Tom Felicia goes, you know, this is hard enough without you calling us the old guys. And I was like, oh my God, no, that means original gangster. And he's like, oh, I love that.
You just proved you were the old guys.
This is hard enough without you calling us the old guys. I'm like, well, now I am going to call you that.
How, I mean, I know this is a really big question, but how has that show changed your life? And how has it changed your design business as well? I would imagine both went up like this.
I mean, it's changed my life. It's insane. You know, I could have never imagined how successful the show was going to be, how much people would love it, how people would really connect with it. Honestly, when the boys and we left after filming the end of season 2, because we filmed season 1 and 2 together. There were 2 separate seasons, but we filmed it all at once. We said goodbye and hugs, and we're like, well, it was great knowing you. Like, this was fun. Like, we really were like, oh, some people might watch this, but this is definitely the end. We're never, you know, we'll see you around. So yeah, we could have never imagined that, you know, 8 seasons later, we'd still be going. You know, so it's, and then my design, it's been interesting. So our main client is that home builder, and has been for quite some years. I would say we've dated for the last 8 years. We finally just got married. I really like.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're expecting about 60 to 100 model homes next year. We really focus on working with builders. Being on Queer Eye and working with those heroes, that the home is such an emotional thing. I honestly, like, that is enough for me. It's a lot. It's very much. It takes a toll, and so working with builders is great because there's no emotion connected to it. There's no text at 3 o'clock in the morning of, "Oh my God, I just found the most amazing piece of art online. I want you to work it into it." I do some residential individuals, but for the most part, we stick with builders. So, have the inquiries went up? Yes. But we mainly stick with working with builders.
And how many lines do you have? You have an art. You just released like an art line.
I actually had most of that before Queer Eye,
which is incredible. Like, I didn't realize you were like ruling the interior world like that before. And did you feel that a lot of people thought in the beginning of Queer Eye that you guys were all just like thrown in there and you really didn't have any?
I think so. We really didn't know each other. I was like,
no. I knew
Yeah.
you didn't know each other, but I think there was probably some criticism, like they don't know what they're doing. They're not really designers or this or that. Did you feel that?
I never got that. That's not really something I think I've ever heard.
Because
we're all. And
we all thought.
No.
Bobby's
no.
working a lot harder than the others.
The others love to hear that. I think that most people could see that I was really in there doing it, and it didn't take long. A simple Google search would see that I actually had a design firm and I had stores, and I had been in the design industry for, a decade and a half before I went on the show. Like, it really was my business. Like, sometimes I'll meet people and they're like, "Oh, what do you do outside the show?" I'm like, "I run my design firm." And they're like, "Oh, you actually have one?" I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah.
So as you look forward, I know at one point you had talked about maybe having kids. Is that something you and your husband are still thinking about? And
we got a puppy.
Oh,
we got a dog. Yeah.
Do we have a pic?
Of course. Let's see. Well, there she is as a puppy.
There she
puppy.
is.
Yeah,
Oh my God,
But that was
so
her as
cute.
a baby. She's the most recent season of Queer Eye. You'll see her. Yeah, in New Orleans, you've seen her popping around a lot. Yeah, her and Neon are besties.
But do you think about that? Do you think about having a family, or is that?
It was definitely something that I wanted for years. I think I've gotten over that. Yeah. I think the more of my friends who have kids, the more I'm like, I'm good. Yeah. Uncle Bobby is gonna have so much fun with you, and then he's gonna send you back to his parents after giving you ice cream. Yeah.
So where would you like? So I'm just thinking about the design element of a relationship, and where would you want people to sit down and have a deep conversation when they are like my husband? And I'm trying not to talk bad about my husband. That's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm stuttering. Let me roll it back. No, I love my husband. I love him, but
I love my husband.
I love him so much. No, this is what I'm trying to say.
She is a mess when it comes to design.
Well, we both have very different opinions when it comes to design. How do you navigate that?
Well, luckily with my husband, we've been together for 20 years. And when I met him, he was just a med student in Mount Sinai in New York, like sleeping on a mattress on the floor, like all the stuff in his apartment, like literally found on the street. So he had no opinions. Like, he was just happy that I came in and like decorated the house. So he had no opinions. He has opinions now, but what he doesn't realize is they're just my opinions. Yeah. I'm the one that has molded his taste. So anything he chooses, I'm like, yeah.
But when you have a couple, that comes in and one's thinking this and one's thinking that, how do you navigate
This is
that?
why I don't do residential clients. No, I do get that question a lot. I get that DM a lot, especially from people, that aren't like in their early 20s getting married. Like, neither of them have anything, so it doesn't matter. It's people in their 30s and 40s who have had their own homes. They've already had their design aesthetic, and they're coming together in a relationship. Years ago, I was doing a speech in Denver, and this woman at the end asked a question, and she's like, "So I'm dating this guy. We've been dating for a few years. I love him. I want to marry him, but he has zero design taste. He couldn't care less about what I do in the home. It's just like a blank space." She's like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Marry him." I'm like, "How do you see this as a bad thing?" And she's like, "Oh my God, you just reframed that." She's like, this is a great thing. I'm like, yes, but we can't all be that lucky so for me, I always say, try to come together on a color. Because even if somebody loves mid-century, the other one loves boho or modern farmhouse, a cohesive color can bring all that together. Some things might be a bit of a hodgepodge, but as the years go on, those things will evolve and those things will iron themselves out. But try to come together on a cohesive color, because you can make anything work if you can come together on one color or a collection of colors.
Have you ever fired? I know you said you don't work with a lot of individual clients, but have you ever fired a client? I hear that a lot.
I've come real close to it.
Really?
Yeah.
What
and they're always friends.
Oh.
They're always the friends that you're like, I said no to this a dozen times because. No, I've definitely referred clients out in the very beginning because I believe that if you're coming to me and you want me to do your house and your aesthetic is maximalism and you're only coming to me because you love Queer Eye and you want me to do your house, I'm not a maximalist designer. That is not my thing. It gives me anxiety. Like, I can appreciate its beauty, but it's not something that I'm passionate about. In turn, I have designer friends who are amazing at maximalism.
And what would that be? That's like the wallpaper with the pattern and
the wallpaper and the wallpaper and the wallpaper.
Yeah.
Like all the tchotchkes, all the wall. Yeah, like a whole gallery wall where there's only like this much, like a lot. And it can be beautiful. It's just not for me. And so if I have somebody coming to me to do their house and it's not something that I'm really passionate about, it's going to show in my work. So there are many a times where I will refer clients. I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm for you, but this designer, you guys are going to thrive together because you love the same type of things. So I have many, many a times referred a client to a designer that I feel is going to work better with them.
Have you ever worked in a nursing home or a hospital? Because, no, wait.
Funny you should say that.
Really?
I did do some community service in a nursing home.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, what was that? Well, we don't have to get into that.
Everyone just got so quiet.
But
It was just literally unpaid speeding tickets. I was poor.
Oh, man. You had a life. But when I think about the philosophy of this book, and your husband's a doctor, my husband's a doctor, I've been in hospitals, and I walk in, I'm like, this is so gross. I would hate to be sick in here. Did you ever think about that, like how we can improve those kind of spaces and community spaces? Because it's the philosophy of your book. Like, it can lift us up.
Those spaces are hard just because there's so much regulation around design in hospitals and the type of surface, the materials. Like, I think companies that make those type of materials are getting better. Like, if you notice, like, newer facilities actually do feel better because, again, people are starting to realize, the connection between mental health and like feeling better and not being sick, So yeah, some of the older spaces, I definitely agree with you. I walk in, I was like, oh God, this is so depressing and sad. But I've noticed newer hospitals, designers are thinking of it. Manufacturers who manufacture those type of materials specifically for medical use, they're starting to think about it more. So yeah,
something we should definitely think about, because I don't want to be old in a nursing home and looking at gray ass walls. You know what I mean? Like, it's so depressing. Oh wait, this is what I want to say. I just thought of this. Plants. You think fake plants are okay? So wait.
Go relax. So here is when I do think a fake plant is okay. So let's say you have replaced this live plant in your house over and over and over because your room does not have the right amount of sunlight and it keeps dying. That is not good on your mental health. Constantly replacing something that you keep killing. That's not good on anybody. But plants release endorphins. Even if it's not a real plant, it's still tricking your mind. Oh, this is life, this is green. You're not obviously getting the air cleaning and the oxygen out of it, but it's still like a good faux plant can give you some of the same feelings that a real one can. So I am definitely mainly pro-live plant, but there are occasions where if you keep killing it, don't just keep replacing it. That's sad.
How do you feel about that answer?
Yeah. Is that okay for you?
Yes, you can wash them.
Yes.
You should always bring them in the shower and rinse them. My philosophy in my
Rub-a-dub-dub, big plants in the tub.
Wash your bush. Okay. Am I going to get fired from the Chicago Humanities Festival?
How do you make it on live TV?
It's not live. It's not live. It's taped.
Wait, can I tell a funny story about a live TV segment I did the other day at
Yes, do
KTLA?
it.
So I'm on there, and there's 3 lovely female anchors, and then there's one older white gentleman who's an anchor. I forget his name. I'm so sorry. But towards the end of my interview, he was like, "Oh, so I have a question for you. I have an issue." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Every time I go into Home Depot and Lowe's looking for caulk, I never know which caulk to get." He's like, they have the 3-year caulk and the 5-year caulk and the lifetime caulk. None of the caulk ever lasts as long as it says it's going to. And I'm like, turning beet red. The girls at this point are like trying not to laugh. And I was like, first of all, it's caulk.
Caulk.
Not caulk. You're missing an L. And you're right, they never last as long as they're supposed to. And it's funny, like Emily Hampshire from Schitt's Creek, she's one of my best friends, and her and I's favorite thing to do, like all of our DMs is just nothing but news bloopers. We love sending each other news bloopers. So she literally called me like happy crying, going like, "Oh my God, you're in one of the things I would send you." She's like, "This is amazing."
It was WGN, wasn't it?
KTLA.
No, I'm kidding. It was KTLA?
It was KTLA.
Oh, that makes
Sam
sense.
was off that day.
Oh,
No,
I
it
was gonna
wasn't
say,
Sam.
was it
No,
Sam?
I wish it was Sam because I
Sam
love
is the longtime entertainment reporter in LA, and he's a cock. Okay. So I just wanted to read this because I just thought it was so sweet, and this is your dedication, and I just thought it really summed up what you were trying to do here. So it says, "To you, you have helped support and lift me up over the years. Now my hope is that, in return, these pages will help you to create a space that not only you are proud of, but also betters your own life with every moment you spend in it." That's very sweet.
Thank you.
How have fans and people that you've interacted with over these years really lifted you up?
I mean, you guys are all amazing. We're so lucky that we're on a show that really attracts wonderful people. I'll know other friends in Hollywood, and they're like, "Oh, the comments we get, they're so mean." And I was like, we get some, but I'm like, our fans are just so great. If you're an asshole, you're probably not watching our show. And if you were an asshole, you're a little less of one now. So our show attracts really great, amazing people, and so it's just been phenomenal. There are those moments where I'll be standing in line at Starbucks holding somebody as they're crying, thinking, I really just wanted a coffee. But, but I have to remind myself, like our show really does touch people in a really emotional way. And so I always make sure I take the time to hear that person's story and validate their feelings. And because, without you guys, our show wouldn't be around. Yeah.
I was so happy to hear that. I don't know how much you know about TV, but many times things are super produced. And you go in and you guys ask questions to someone and the camera's not at the right angle, and then they say, "Can you ask that again, and can you reenact it?" But it's still true, you don't do any of that.
So that does exist in our show, but only, when we're like watching the TV, like we're watching the hero, like obviously at some point you see the cameras are in front of our face, but then sometimes you see the back of our head.
Yes. Yeah.
So the only time we reshoot anything is we flip those cameras behind us so you can see the But when we're with our heroes, nothing is reshot. We are so hyper aware that they already are super nervous. They're already like, I'm on a show. I'm like telling the world my feelings, which was a little easier to get them to do in season 1 and 2 because nobody knew what the show was. It's harder now. So we're always very, very hyper aware that if we're like, "Oh, can we move that camera?" Or, "Oh, can you say that again?" Then they're like, "Oh, I'm on a show. I'm on a show," and their guard comes back up, and the wall that we had worked for days to get down comes back up again. So there's been some really great moments in the show that have never made it just because the audio was screwed up or a camera wasn't in the right angle.
You just said something really interesting. How do you navigate the people knowing who you are now? How do you still find those sweet, beautiful stories?
Every once in a while, like usually it's maybe just like 1 to 2 a season, has never seen the show, and we love that. We love that so much. They have no idea who we are, and we can see it. We can see it on their face because like we know. We can tell the way they say, the way they look at us. Like we can tell. And sometimes like week into it, we're like, "You really have never seen the show, have you?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, and we love that because again, it's even more authentic and natural. No.
When can we expect the next season?
I don't know.
You can't say. You're not really allowed to say. Okay, I think now we're going to do some questions from the audience. Is that right?
Correct.
All right.
Do you have
awesome.
one about plants?
So we'll be taking
nothing more to say?
We'll be taking a few questions. If you could please raise your hand, we'll try to make it to you. Please keep your questions brief and state your name before you ask your question. Thank you. All right. Let's see if I could I'm going to scooch through the front here. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm Alex. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I do a lot of therapy, and so love the show for the mental health themes and the work that you all are doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious, in working with the heroes, when you see folks who have executive dysfunction or a history of depression, anxiety, what kinds of things you think about when organizing their space so that it can kind of help them build new habits, like help continue the momentum that they probably get after you leave?
I start small, and I help them realize like the very random, weird little things, like making your bed. You know, do I make my bed every day? No. Do I strive to? Yes. But you know, you say, I can't talk. You tell yourself you're gonna make your bed. You go to walk out the door. You realize you didn't do it. You get that little notch of failure, little subconscious lack of endorphins, and you get to work, and you're already in the mindset of, it's okay not to achieve the goals I've set out to get. But in turn, you make that bed, you get those little endorphins, that little notch of a success, and then you get to work, and you're already on the success train. You're already on the, I can do anything, I can achieve my goals. I know it's literally making your bed, it's such a small thing, but you're subconsciously training your mind to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. So again, by the time you get to work, you've already accomplished things. You're already going there. It's little things like, you know, stacks of laundry in the bedroom. Oh, why are you looking at your husband? Oh, you? Okay. You know, you tell yourself, oh, that shirt's not quite dirty enough to go in the laundry, but it's not quite clean enough to go in the closet. I wore it on the L. I don't want to put it back to L. That's what we call it, right? We call it the L, right? Yeah. See? And so you put it in a little pile, and then you go to bed, and you're like, oh, I told myself I was going to take care of that. Well, it's a little notch of failure. Again, it's not something big, but you're like, it's a failure that you didn't do. The next morning, the very first thing you're confronted with is that thing that you did not accomplish. So you're already in that mindset of, oh, I didn't accomplish it. So I start with little things like that, like these small little things that you don't really think about how they can have a massive effect both inside the home and outside of the home. Like making your bed. Thank you.
We've got another question right over here. Hi, Bobby. I'm Lauren.
Hi.
My question is, so I'm somebody who moves very often, like for 10 years. I moved like once a year, every year.
I was the same for years.
Yeah, and the space I'm in now, I know I won't be in for more than a year. So how do you approach trying to make that place feel like home when also you're trying to balance, like, you know, you're not going to be here a long time, you know, just how would you approach that and still trying to make it feel cozy?
I mean, really finding the pieces you love, again, that evoke emotion, but also, like, I know every lease is like, don't paint your walls, paint them. Paint them.
I love that story. You
Paint 'em.
redid an apartment and then he hired you.
Yeah, like I redid, I like painted and put in new flooring and lighting, and like the superintendent of the building, she hated me, and she went in to do something and found that I had changed all, and was kind of like, I got you now. And she brought the owner of the building in to tattle on me, and he's like, can I hire you to do all the apartments? And I was like, you didn't get me. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday on a talk I was doing about painting. Even if it's a temporary space that you're going to be in a year, make it feel like home. Paint that wall. So who cares if it takes you an afternoon or so, or a day even, right before you move out, to paint it back white? You're getting 364 days of happiness out of that. So don't be afraid to change up a space a little bit just because it's a rental. I mean, obviously put it back the way you found it so you get your deposit back. But, you know, a lot of time, again, people are like, oh, it's temporary, I'm not going to do this. But then that just happens every single place, and you never feel at home. So make the space you're in at the time feel like home, even if that is changing it up a little bit. Yeah.
Does it blow your mind that you were someone who was unhoused at one point and now you literally decorate homes for a living?
Yeah.
It's pretty trippy. It's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got our next question over here.
Hi, Bobby. My name is Richard. I actually wrote this question before because it's kind of a complicated one.
Great.
You talked a little bit about grief. So, what are good ways to reclaim a space that have both positive and negative connotation? Beyond just a fresh coat of paint, how would you suggest altering a space so it didn't remind you of sad or difficult times?
That honestly is a hard one because it's hard for me to know exactly what about that space brings up those bad memories. But I would say trying to fill it with things that evoke good memories. You know, even if it is like earlier, like that rock that you got on an amazing walk with somebody you love, like fill it full of those things. Don't try to erase the feelings of sorrow, the sad things. Just try to fill those voids in your coffers with things that make you feel better. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question on the other side of the house over here.
Hi, Bobby. I'm Carol. I just had a question about the shows from Japan.
Uh-huh.
I really, really enjoyed those.
Me too.
And what was your takeaway from that trip? I love the spaces you designed, especially with very tight spaces.
Yeah,
So,
my takeaway was small spaces are really hard.
yeah. Your takeaway was long.
Yeah, you know, when you have big spaces and unlimited budget, you know, it's easy. 120-foot square apartments, like, it's funny, literally. So those places were sometimes 100 square feet. It would have the 5 of us in there, 1 to 2 heroes, our translator, Lena, a producer, and 2 to 3 camera operators. There would be times we would hear tick, 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 and we'd realize that the gas was on in the stove because one of our operators was like perched up on the stove trying to get the shot. And we're like, oh my God, the gas is on. Japan was hard, but I loved it because it was kind of an exercise for me for small spaces, because here in the States, we don't usually deal with spaces quite that small. And going back to like, go ahead, paint your walls, do whatever, it doesn't matter what your landlords say. They don't feel that way in Japan. They follow the rules. So when they're like, my lease says you cannot even put something up on the wall with a nail, I had to follow that. And so if you notice, a lot of the spaces, I like built something within the space. I built furniture that would create a wall and create an upper loft bed. And you've noticed there's nothing on the wall. There was some like removable wallpaper in some of them, but there wasn't even a picture hung on the walls. So my takeaway was that small spaces are hard.
Would you like to do that again in some other country? Or
Oh, yeah,
It must
absolutely.
re-energize all of you.
It was. I mean, it was hard because, you know, you only saw half of what happened because the translation. So everything took longer. You know, everything took longer, especially like the renovations, even though they were small spaces, they were a challenge to me because I obviously don't speak the language. You know, I couldn't really articulate to the people working on my team like exactly what I wanted sometimes. And with suppliers and stores, like everything was different. You know, in the States, I have my go-tos. I have relationships with them. I can call them and be like, I need a sofa tomorrow, you know, but there, they'd just be like, you know. Yeah.
Who are you?
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Our next question's right over here.
Hi, Bobby. Hi, Matthew. Hi, everybody else. My name's Emma. I do want to start by saying I'm really sorry to hear about your dad.
Thank you.
And what your mom must be going through. I lost my husband last year, actually, to suicide. So that really resonated with me when you talked about the section of your book on grief. I'm really looking forward to reading that. What advice would you give to someone that's kind of in your mom's situation where this is their first time navigating a space, an individual space that's completely their own for the first time, and how to navigate, you know, mental health with designing a space that makes them happy? What advice would you give to someone that's in that position for the first time?
I would say take it slow. Take your time. You know, my mom is like, I'm going to give it a year before I make any decision on where I'm going to move. I'm going to stay here. You know, so my biggest advice, you know, obviously every situation is different, so it's hard for me to say exactly, but I would say take your time and don't be hard on yourself for taking that time. You know, don't let anybody push you to be like, oh, well, this is what you need to do, which is why I'm not saying much right now, but take your time because only you know when the right moments are to move forward, to you know, reclaim that side of the closet, to, you know, move the stuff out of the drawer in the bathroom. You know, don't try to force yourself to bite off more than you can chew. Take your time.
I think your book is a beautiful way to help you do that, because the way you have it broken down, it makes it very simple. It's very thoughtful. You get I was getting very reflective and like it's not just like pick blue or this. It's like, why do I like these decisions? What makes me happy? And you do it very methodically and step by step. So
Thank you.
It would probably help a little bit.
We have our next question.
Thank you
right
for
over
sharing
here.
that. That's-
Hi, I'm Joan.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for your openness in the show, because when you tell the truth, I notice it allows me to tell the truth that much more. My question is, what are some of the positive impacts that you weren't expecting that came out of the show outside of the lives of the heroes?
Some of the outside of the lives of the heroes. I would say the show's definitely brought me out of my shell a bit more. You know, I've always kind of known as the shy one, even though like once you get to know me or see me in person, I'm not necessarily the shy one. I'm just not the loudest one. And that's no shade to Jonathan. Yeah, I would think it's some of the positive things is definitely like I've got to know myself more. You know, I've got to work through a lot of my own trauma because on the show we've realized in the very beginning, like if we don't talk to our heroes about things that have happened in our lives, why would they do it for us? And so it's caused a lot of us to kind of work through some traumas that we either weren't prepared to or really didn't have any desire to work through. So yeah, I think the show's been kind of therapy for us as well.
You had to revisit a church, and that you had said you would never step foot in the church again.
It's funny. So I had a lunch with the creator of the show and the showrunner about a week before we started filming, and they were like, you know, are there any no's with you? Like, is there any just like, what are your boundaries? And I was like, I am fine with anything. Actually, just don't make me go into church. And then,
And then they come to you and say,
"Oh, though they tried to trick me. They told me I was renovating a community center." Yeah.
girl, there was a crucifix up on that wall.
Yeah.
Come on.
They tried to say that I was only renovating a community center. They didn't say a community center attached to a church.
Oh my
but
God.
my the head of my team like, pulls me aside. He's like, "Don't believe him. It's a church." Yeah, I almost didn't do the episode.
Oh my! Do you have any relationship with religion, or do you believe in God or anything?
No.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. Anybody else?
Yes, our final question of the night will be over here.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi.
I'm usually someone who knows what I want. I love colors.
Say that again. Sorry.
I'm usually someone who knows what I want. I love colors. I love thinking about mental health and design space. But then I get overwhelmed with everything I've chosen, and I'm like, none of this makes sense in here. I got to restart. Then I find one thing, and then I just kind of go every other direction, and nothing's cohesive. So what would you give advice to someone, me, who struggles with like just kind of like taking a step back and really thinking about, will this benefit my space?
I mean, I think you're kind of on the right track of taking a step back and asking yourself, will this benefit my space? And I think maybe you should ask yourself that while you're still at the store. Yeah, you know, we all have to do it, you know? But you know, finding that one thing that you really, really love and building off of that, I think will help you kind of hone in more on what makes you happy in there instead of, you know, all the different things that make you happy. But yeah, I would like, if you're one of those people who love to get a bunch of things and then you get them home and you're like, this is too much, ask yourself that at the store. Like, what function is this going to serve in my life? How is this going to make my life better? How is this going to make my space feel more zen and make me happy? And if it's really, you realize it's just an endorphin you're getting off a retail purchase, which we all do, don't do that. Go buy some chocolate. Yeah.
That's great. That's it. We're done, right? Done with the questions. Thank you.
Thank
Can we
you,
give a big round of
everybody.
applause?
Thank you. You guys have been amazing, and thank you.
Thank
You were
you,
amazing.
yeah.